Hi, everybody. I hope you can see and hear us. We are here again with you today on Wednesday at 3 p.m. London time with SAMexpert Live. And apologies upfront for my voice. I've got a fever, so I'm taking a back seat today. I'm going to moderate this session. And Daryl, my colleague, my partner in SAMexpert, he's going to own it today because this whole area of Microsoft agreement negotiations is entirely in his area of expertise because he's been doing this since correct me if I'm wrong, Daryl.
1998.
Yeah, long time ago. And before that, he sold those contracts when he was working for Microsoft. Yeah, please excuse me. So, the way these lives are structured, please say hello, by the way. Hello, where are you from? What brings you here? And please ask your questions in the live chat because we still do these sessions live. It's a live event. It's a Q&A. So if you have questions you want us to answer them live, feel free to ask them. If you don't want us to answer them live, please send them to us, using this email, by the way, this email on top, and we will take them in our next session. And similar session will be held in January as well. So, what we also have prepared some of the questions that you sent us as a follow up to our previous live events. So we're going to answer them, and also some of the anonymized questions from our everyday clients on the same subjects. Again, Microsoft agreements, enterprise agreements, CSP, unified support, how to negotiate, how to get the best pricing. Please feel free to ask your questions. And I'll kick off I'll let Daryl maybe introduce himself very quickly.
Thank you, Alex. For those of you that are not acquainted with SAMexpert and with myself and Alex, so SAMexpert is a Microsoft boutique software asset management / economic contractual negotiation consultancy. A lot in there. Basically, we take care of everything to do with Microsoft from a commercial perspective, both on the side of end customers and also providers, SaaS and ISVs that are partnered up with Microsoft, and we assist them developing their business. I've been around Microsoft since, as I said, 1998. Used to work for Microsoft on the contractual side, moved over to private consulting in 2003, 2004, and a couple of years ago partnered up with Alex around the SAMexpert initiative. So that's a bit about my background. Today we've got just under 30 minutes now. So we're going to be running until 4:30 CET, 3:30 UK time. Q&A. So we're going to kick off. Alex, you want to bring up the first questions? Alex is going to moderate it, and I'm here
Yes.
to answer
Yeah.
and to
So,
discuss.
without any specific order,
No, without let's just go. Push.
Microsoft is actively pushing us towards E5. It's one of the clients. Actually, many clients ask the same. How can we get the most out of it? So, shall we do this? Any negotiation tips? So I guess the main question here is, if Microsoft is asking us, why don't you switch to E5? Can we ask something in return, and how?
Yeah. So I think, as you said, it's a very common question, and Microsoft, as we know, are pushing most clients or everybody that they can, upgrading them from E3 to E5. So what we're seeing now, that when renewals are coming up for organizations, even not even renewals, just part of the annual true-up process, Microsoft is conducting discussions around moving midterm organizations from E3 to E5, and it's very simple. Why? They get compensated. There's higher compensation for the sales reps on E5 than on E3. Actually, E3 compensation has dropped, and you must always ask yourself, when somebody's pushing a product, why are they pushing it so aggressively? It's all about compensation. So yes, absolutely. If you've been pushed to E5, you need to ask yourself, first of all, one main question: do you actually need it? Before you get into the negotiation side, what can you actually get in return? Do you actually need E5? Not because Microsoft's saying it's the best and greatest, and we've got this incredible offer now that's not going to repeat itself. Great offers always repeat themselves. Believe me, you can come in 6 months, 12 months, that great offer will still be on the table. So that's not the reason to move. First of all, the reason to move is if you have a need for those additional capabilities, usually around security. So first look into your requirements, evaluate if you actually are going to use those components, those additional components that you're receiving, and what can you actually remove from your IT infrastructure from a security perspective. So look at what third-party products those E5 components are going to substitute. What is the benefit? Again, security-wise, cost-wise, maintenance, implementation, everything needs to be looked at. And only then take a decision, is it good for your organization or not? If the answer is yes, it's good for my organization, that's fine. Enter negotiations. But you want to get something in return. And usually what you want to get in return is, of course, higher discounts. And yes, you can get a higher discount on E5. Okay. It's not rocket science. You want to get a higher discount. The way that you should position it is, well, there are multiple ways. One would be, well, I don't need E5 now. I'm only going to be needing it in 12 months. How are you going to Microsoft? How are you going to compensate me for 12 months of paying but not receiving value? In a discount. There are various ways to compensate. Maybe your rollout is going to be very slow. So look at your rollout over the next 2-3 years. You might be rolling out E5 components per segment, per department, maybe per subsidiary. Multiple reasons why not. Maybe it's a global company. Um, use that as leverage again to get a discount to compensate for the time that you have shelfware. That's another reason. Maybe you need support because you're going to be changing a specific product that you have in use and you don't have the skill set. So ask Microsoft for either architecture support, professional services, or monetary compensation to, to bring in a partner, a third party partner. That's also a so called discount or compensation. So look at everything, put it on the table, spread it out, and then start asking Microsoft for benefits. So that is my best practice around E3 to E5. Don't be pushed to E5. Again, only if you really need it. The best offers that Microsoft put on the table that are limited will come back next year because that sales rep still wants that higher compensation for E5. So no pressure end of year, no pressure end of fiscal year, no pressure Microsoft fiscal year, your calendar year. Take it easy, sit tight, but have a look at it. One more point, sorry, on this is E5 doesn't suit the entire organization as a um, cross board. You need to look at alternatives. Usually, if you're going to E5, you're going for security, as I said. Look at maybe taking either components of E5 if you don't need the full package, or maybe looking at personas. So maybe you have personas that only need the F3 component that also has certain security components that come in E5. So you can differentiate and you can play around with various personas, various packages. Also, a really good way to negotiate. You might actually not need that, but you can position it as a negotiation leverage. Or, to my opinion, I always believe in personas and multiple bundles. So you can use that as part of your leverage and discussion as well. So don't just run into E5, E3 to E5. Look at everything, and you're actually in a very good position to negotiate. Alex, you.
Thanks, Daryl. By the way, while you were talking, I was thinking, you said switch to E5 only if you need it. From a pure negotiation perspective, would you actually still advise not to disclose that you need it? Because that would certainly undermine your discounting position, wouldn't it?
So actually, yes, that's a very good point. What my recommendation is always to start off a renewal with E3. So if you have E3 and you haven't moved yet, if you're in E5, it's a different negotiation strategy completely. Okay, if you're in E3, if you're on E3, start off the negotiation with E3. Push hard for an E3 proposal, because if you start with E5, you're not going to be able to step back to an E3 proposal. They just won't provide you with that benefit. So always start off with the lower option and slowly move up. I would even start up with E3, add in one component, two components, and then let Microsoft make it really, really worthwhile for you to take E5.
Attractive, yes. By the way, thank you for the questions you ask in the chat. We will take them. So there's one licensing question right now that I will take later. Let's talk about agreements first, but I promise. So let's move on. I actually have a personal favorite in all the questions, which is this one. I tried linking my EA negotiation with our Azure MACC, and the results were not what I thought. Why? So yeah,
So,
I'm afraid you will have to explain to the audience what MACC means and how it
so,
works.
so basically, a MACC is a Microsoft commitment, where you're committing upfront for mainly pay-as-you-go services. So what Microsoft is happy to provide large organizations with is if you, well, you customer can't commit to reserved instances, and you want that full flexibility of pay-as-you-go, then please commit upfront, and we'll provide you with a substantial discount for that 3-year commitment. It's a 3-year commitment. And MACCs are very commonplace in large organizations. So basically, what you have, I'll call the MACC a Azure agreement, and you have your EA agreement. You can look at it as a Microsoft, as an Azure agreement for 3 years, very similar to an EA, just on Azure consumption. So basically, you're committing every year to meet a very specific consumption level, consumption from a monetary perspective. So if you're committing $1 million, you committed $1 million. If you don't reach $1 million, you've thrown away money. Um, that's basically the whole concept behind a MACC. Now, you would think that if I've got an EA here for $1 million a year, and I've got Azure requirements for another $1 million a year, I can actually negotiate them together. And maybe if I'm committing $1,100,000 or $1,200,000 on my Azure estate, Microsoft will give me another 2, 3, 4, 5% on my EA. No. Microsoft is very, very reluctant to join or to combine a negotiation with the two agreements. They look at it as almost as two different companies. Oh, this is your Azure commitment. We can't help you on your EA, even if you do increase your Azure commitment. And it's the same on the EA. If you willing to move from E3 to E5, we can't compensate you on the Azure. It's a different, so to call it, compensation model, discounting model. We have tried to a certain extent of success. Okay, I'm not saying it's 100% because there's always variations. To a certain extent, we've tried to combine negotiations by bringing in EAs and Azure. It's tough. It is tough. You need to be really, really smart about your positioning. And I'd actually say that you have to be really assertive, because the first answer you're going to receive is no, it cannot be done. And you'll hear that again and again and again. You need to have a fallback position for Azure in order to maybe build up some leverage, and maybe even a fallback position for your E5 to E3. So you need to be really smart about it. You can't just say, I want this and I want this, and Microsoft knows that you're already committed to E3 or to E5. You committed on your EA. Sorry, guys. This is all subscription. You can't walk away. You are a long-term obligated customer of ours. You can't walk away from an EA. On Azure, if you've already pre-committed your workloads and Microsoft knows about it, why are they going to compensate you on the back end of the EA for it? Even on Azure MACC, they're not going to be happy to compensate you if you've already pre-committed. So you really need to plan ahead on, first of all, what you want to provide, what information you want to provide Microsoft, what alternatives. Don't forget, there are alternatives. Don't enter into a negotiation without an alternative. You have to have GCP, you have to have AWS, Alibaba, or something else on the table. So it's very, very tough to combine the two, to negotiate the two together. You need to have alternatives for both, and you need to be big enough, and the deal needs to be, let's call it, lucrative enough, so the end result is that the sales rep is going to get highly compensated. The majority of the compensation is going to be on Azure and not on the EA, because compensation is different. Alex, you've gone quiet.
We have a question from the audience. I want to put it on screen. How come it is called Pay-as-you-Go, which is supposed to be based on your consumption, if there's a commitment required? Do you want to take that? Do you want me to take that one?
No, I'll take it. It's actually, Pay-as-you-Go is basically, it's the higher tier of payment. It's just, I call it the payment tier. So when you're committing to Pay-as-you-go, is basically, it's a contradiction. The EA is a commitment. So when you're going to Pay-as-you-go, and you've got the flexibility to move your workloads wherever you want to do, wherever you want, and you have that technical flexibility, you're actually paying a premium price for that. And organizations, up until, I'll say, a few months ago, haven't been very conscious about costs. The only way for them to keep that flexibility and to reduce costs, because the difference between reserved instances and pay-as-you-go, what's it, Alex? 72%, 70%, I don't know, something like
It's
that.
massive. Yeah,
It's
very
massive.
big.
It's massive. But like the reserved instance option confined you to a very specific workload, so to say. Pay-as-you-go gave the flexibility. So Microsoft has been very smart about saying, oh, you want to have that flexibility, and you don't want to pay that premium price, you want a discount of, it could be anywhere between 10 and, I want to be careful what I say because it depends on workloads. It can go all the way up to around 30% plus minus, maybe more, depending on the size. You can say that I said that, but it's not going to help you, because you need to have the right leverage to get those high discounts. But Microsoft is going to require a commitment. Microsoft loves commitments, because then, first of all, they've got predictability. And the account rep, it's all about the account rep. The account rep knows exactly what's going to be coming, what's coming in every single year. He's meeting his quota. It always goes back to what your account rep is compensated on. If you understand that, you can turn the entire negotiation around, and then you have the leverage. Great question.
So there's there's one question here in the chat. Sorry, excuse my cough, because I have a fever. So Samira is asking on LinkedIn about, will government public customers be eligible for CSP and CE price list, blah blah blah. We will answer your question. So firstly, I will reach out to you directly when I clarify this with my CSP channels, because we don't sell licenses ourselves, and questions like this obviously trigger our interest immediately. And for everybody else on this live, we'll answer that question publicly in January in the next Q&A.
Please.
But Samir, I will reach out to you directly about this
There's another question. You want to just bring it up, Alex? Another one about, what if MS doesn't want to show us real ERP discounts? It's actually a good question. Do you want me to read it out? Let your voice is. What if Microsoft? Yeah, that's fine. What if Microsoft doesn't want to show us real ERP? ERP is estimated retail pricing. So that's the price list for everybody on the call, the standard price list. Discount for E3 and E5. Says that we have to decide at the ERP level which variant you want, and only then they will apply to the business desk for a discount. So the way that it works for everybody is that Microsoft has multiple price lists. They actually just announced that they're making changes to their not global, but to their regional price lists. They have price lists in euros, in pounds, in dollars, in the US dollars, in the various countries. So basically, the way that it works, there are 4 tiers. If you're looking at an EA, okay, I'm taking a simple enterprise agreement. Level A, level B, level C. Each one's a tier. Between each tier, there's a certain difference in pricing, anywhere between 3 to 5% between each tier. So if you're starting at level A and you can actually go to level D, there's like what, Alex? I don't know, 18, 20% difference. I don't know, plus minus, depending on the price, on the waterfall of the product, of that specific product. So basically, Microsoft is obligated to provide you with formal ERP prices. Okay, I've never seen this, and I've been around Microsoft for many years, and I worked for Microsoft back in the day. Microsoft, I'm not talking about the channel. The channel can do various stuff if they want to really play dirty, but Microsoft is Microsoft. I've never seen them provide an ERP price that is not list price. So there are companies out there that will say, oh, that they will uplift the list price by 10, 15%, and then give you a discount on that. And then they'll say, well, we gave you this huge discount. Aren't you happy? Where actually it's not a real discount. Microsoft have never done that. I've never seen that. And if you've seen it, I would love to hear about it. But I've done hundreds of contracts, and I've never been in a situation where that's been the case. So they always start off with ERP. So you know what your baseline is. Now, again, the level A, B, C, D depends on your size of your organization. There are tiers, 500 to 2,500, 2,500 to what's it, 7,000, Alex? I've gone blank. Or to, and then 15,000 and
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't matter. And then you negotiate a discount. Okay, and I'd say that again, you can always negotiate a discount, even though discounts aren't as high as they used to be. It's still negotiable. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay. I promised to take the licensing question closer to the end of this show, so I'll take
Yeah.
it now. So,
No,
how
no,
to approach
Alex, wait. Let's take it at the end. There's some, if you don't mind. Okay.
we
Okay.
have
I want to
we have
leave.
let
I
me
want to leave
yeah
technical questions because there's some other
we
great
have,
stuff that we received from our customers.
yeah. I
Just
mean,
pick one.
okay. Then in that case, this is the one I'm going to bring back, because you mentioned that Microsoft likes
That's a good one.
separating Azure negotiations with EA negotiations. Like, no, let's play it differently. Different teams, different negotiators, different Microsoft employees compensated for them. And then we also have unified support. And in my experience, and in your experience too, now we work together. The unified support team is completely different. It's a completely different team. They don't depend on EA. The EA team doesn't depend on them. They have their own sales targets. And to be honest, when I first encountered them, it was about 5 years ago. I actually felt like they have no clue what they're doing. How do we leverage unified support contract to get a better deal with EAs? Is it possible even?
So I'm going to say that very, very, very simply. You can leverage it, but it's going to be the other way around. You won't receive benefits via your EA. The benefits for signing your unified support won't come through the EA. It might go the other way. So there are ways to play around with it. First of all, you need to remember, as Alex said, it's two separate, let's call it groups within Microsoft. Your commercial group that is providing you with your enterprise agreement, with your Azure consumption commitments, is not compensated for unified support. They couldn't give for if you sign or don't sign or what you take. The unified support team couldn't give what you do on your enterprise agreement. But your unified support cost is linked to your enterprise agreement and your Azure spend, because it's built on a percentage of your actual commercial obligations. So the more you pay for an EA, the more you pay for Azure, you're going to be paying in the back end a higher price for unified. So the best practice is, first of all, yes, they need to be separated. Okay, they are negotiated separately. Microsoft won't link them. The good news is that you can negotiate better pricing on unified. There are ways to reduce costs substantially. It's really overlooked. It's dramatically overlooked by organizations. But we've been very, very successful in the last 12 months using some, we can have a session about it, using some really cool tactics around how to reduce unified support by reducing it by hundreds of thousands of dollars on contracts by an average of 15 to 20%. And there are just a few tips that we're running out of time today, and maybe we should do a session on unified support. But definitely, if you're looking at alternatives and you're looking at different, changing a bit the percentage, that the tiering of percentages that you're paying on your EA and your Azure consumption for your unified support contract, that can also be modified. Pricing on professional services that also go into your unified support contract, the bigger picture, can also be discussed. So a lot to be done on the unified, but very difficult to link the two together.
By the way, thanks for this idea, Daryl, because we usually, when we announce our live shows, we don't always have a specific topic that we're going to discuss. So it's just a contractual negotiation Q&A. We can dedicate the January session to negotiating unified support.
Unified. There's so much to be done there, and it's getting very expensive.
So if you go to our YouTube channel, I appreciate many of you may be watching us on LinkedIn. If you go to our YouTube channel, we have upcoming live shows as one of the first rows on the channel's homepage.
Alex, by the way, did we publish that unified support white paper on our website yet?
Yes.
Is it there?
There's a very long article on our website, SAMexpert.com, in the article section, which is dedicated to unified and Premier support. Obviously, Premier support is gone, but we still keep it there to explain the differences to those who are still switching. And Daryl rewrote that article about a month ago completely, added lots of other sections. So it's actually pretty big article. One of the most visited articles on the website. Traffic has increased to this. Read that. Very good article. So shall I take that last question?
Yeah, take the last question, please. Yeah, let's wrap up with that.
Good. So how to approach the issue that M365 license up a user? Technically, if one user has 2 accounts, he needs 2 licenses. Okay, you're not the first one to ask this question. We get this question a lot. And my response is always like a response of a proper consultant in this case. Why do you need 2 licenses for one user? There are no enterprise agreement commitments that are based on user accounts and AD. You may have security considerations around those accounts. But if you think about, and there's one thing I need to tell. I used to work in a company that was a half system integrator. It was my company, half software asset management, before restarting SAMexpert. And I kind of know how things work from the other side. If somebody has 2 accounts, there must be a reason for it. Some reasons are impossible to circumvent. And then in that case, you end up with 2 accounts. You can do nothing about it. But normally, if somebody needs multiple accounts, it's for admin reasons, for maybe accessing certain applications, then why do you assign a license to each of them? Assign it to one account. So we need to understand more of a context here. But what I'm trying to say here is, don't begin with that thought that every user record, every user account needs a license. It's not like that. Obviously, there's a risk. If you use a quite popular feature in Microsoft Office 365 admin portal, auto assignment of licenses. You create a new account and it immediately gets a license. It's actually tunable. You can fine tune it. Then yes, still you have a risk that you know your license may be assigned to wrong account. But every organization has a reason to have a number of users with multiple Active Directory accounts. It's fine. It comes down to policies. Your commitment to Microsoft on an enterprise agreement is to license all qualified users, not Active Directory accounts. Start from reviewing your policies, and that's it. It's not a non-compliant situation. I hope I answered your question. Uh, we we've come to the top of the hour, which is not top of the hour, 30 minutes as promised. So if you forgive us, excuse us, we will see you next week. And by the way, next week is a very exciting, by the way, session, because that's going to be a training. It's going to be a pure licensing training. So bring your friends, spread the word. It's going to be it's a SQL Server licensing training. Oh, that is going to be massive. I don't think anybody has yet released that sort of material, because SQL Server has just been updated so drastically. You want to be there. You want to see that. You want to learn that. So thanks very much for questions today. Thanks, Daryl, for joining me as usual. I mean, do you have a choice, really?
No,
Uh,
I don't.
and yeah,
But I
and
do enjoy myself.
please join us every Wednesday on this channel. That's what we're trying to do right now. Be live with you, interactive,
Exactly.
answering questions live every Wednesday, 3 o'clock. Daryl, do you want to say anything or just end?
Yeah, I was just gonna no, I was just reading in the corner of my eye another question that came up, and I was just about to wrap up. So just before I
Can
wrap up,
I'll put it on
yeah,
screen
so
quickly.
if you want to just stay on for another 2 minutes, please stay on. If you need to jump off, and catch this on YouTube afterwards. A company of around 5,500 licenses, E3 plus others, is a big player for Microsoft in Europe? Question mark. Yes, it is. It's a nice size. It's a very nice size company in Europe. It's mid-size, and from a leverage perspective, what you can negotiate, yes. I'm sure that you can negotiate with the right people in Microsoft. It always comes down to negotiating with the right people. You definitely can position yourself as a strategic negotiator, and get some substantial discounts and other benefits. So, yes, to your question. If you were in the US, I would answer differently. So thank you very much, Alex. Thank you very much for the participation and for the questions. Then I love this interaction. I love hearing from everybody. We've got another half a dozen questions at least that we didn't manage to address today. We'll come back. We'll have another Q&A session on contracts, maybe towards the end of January, beginning of February, just to close off all those questions that we didn't manage to answer today that we received prior to this call. So again, thank you everybody for taking your time. Alex, again, it's always a pleasure being on our Q&A sessions. It's always fun, and see everybody next week. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Bye bye. And by the way, click like if you haven't yet. Thank you. I appreciate that.